All right. Hey, you guys, how's it going? This is Anton and Eric and Mitch. Eric and I are from TED Talks Automation. Many of you have seen a lot of our videos we've done over the past, anything from Amazon automation to Facebook automation to trucking automation. Over the last year and a half, we've partnered with people who are experienced in different industries and are very well versed in the industries that we are bringing to you. Today, we have, to this day forward, we have about 100 clients between trucking automation, Amazon, and Facebook. Today, we're bringing on Mitch. Mitch is a best-selling author, an entrepreneur, a real estate and investing coach and trainer. He's personally trained over 1,700 students nationwide and is a YouTube sensation. I want you to check out Flippin' with Mitch and Maylee. He's a wonderful gentleman that we've got to meet over the last few months, and we've developed a great relationship with him. And he has done over 200 fix and flips, dozens of rentals across the country, multifamily, wholesaling, short-term rentals. So we'd like to introduce Mitch. Mitch, we appreciate you coming on and talking with us about Airbnbs and real estate and how to get involved and learn a little bit about what you're doing, man.
You got it. Absolutely. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me today. So I'm excited to chat about short-term rentals. This is an incredible market for short-term rentals. For the last 2 years, kind of this coronavirus effect, right, where we've had values take off in the market. And right now we're starting to see the markets kind of plateau a little bit. And you know, it's always a good time to invest in real estate as long as you're knowledgeable. And all you have to do as a real estate investor is just adjust with the market. So that's what we're doing right now. You know, Airbnbs, short-term rentals, they are fantastic investment strategies and they're super hot in this market. So I wanted to take a minute to kind of show what we're doing and introduce the idea of going out and acquiring these short-term rentals at scale, meaning acquiring a lot of them so that we can build wealth in real estate. So here we go. All right, so knowledge is the tool that enables you to change your mindset, and mindset is the key to changing your life. So not only are we going to talk about strategies, but we're going to talk about the mindset that you have to go and be successful in real estate, because you can do it one of two ways. You can do it in a way that's simply going to replace your job, but won't provide you with much more time freedom or financial freedom than what your job does. Or you can approach real estate investing in a way where it builds generational wealth for you and your children and provides you with that time freedom that everyone is looking for in stepping out of that rat race. So we're going to talk about that a little bit today, but I want to start with a story. Just a quick disclosure for you as we start to get into some of this content. I am not a licensed attorney, accountant, financial advisor, broker, real estate agent, or any other licensed individual. And even if I had a license, I'm not acting in a capacity where I'm giving you specific advice or counsel today. This is just general information. This is stuff that I've gone out and done and have been very successful with. And I want to just share the general concept with you today. So with that in mind, I want to start with a story. This story is about a young man who loved building cars from the ground up. He would find scrap metal and he'd weld the body together. He would he would do the upholstery himself. He'd build the engine himself. And these cars would turn out beautifully amazing. And he'd drive them around town, and the people in the town would see them and admire them, and they'd want to buy them. And so quickly he got the idea, you know what? I should start a business. I mean, how hard is it to break into the auto industry, right? So that's what he did. He started a business hand building these cars. He was the only employee. So he managed the books, and he was the production line, and he was the CEO, and he was the janitor. He was all the things. And his business model was he would go get orders from people on these cars, and he'd take down payments on these orders. And he would take the down payment from several orders to finish the car. And once the car was done, he would collect the rest of the money. Now, this model worked for him for a little while, but the problem was he became too popular. He got more business than he could handle. And before he knew it, he was in trouble. He had more orders in than he was able to complete, and people started asking for refunds. And quickly he got to a point where he couldn't refund the money that was given as a down payment because he had put that money into the car that he was working on. So that cascaded and got out of control, and he ended up going bankrupt. His first business went bankrupt. Well, licking his wounds, he went back to what he knew. He worked a job. He helped out on different farms. He was a farmer by trade, and just kind of resigned himself to the idea of, my business didn't work. I'm just going to go back to the workforce. Well, a few years passed. He had some new designs that he was excited about, and he thought, you know what? I'm going to try my hand at it again. The problem was he used the exact same business model that he'd used before. Now, if we do the same thing over and over again, what kind of results can we expect? The same results, right? And that's exactly what happened. He went bankrupt a second time. Now, this time he thought to himself, I give up. I'm not going to try this again. This was too much, going bankrupt twice on the same business model. I obviously don't have what it takes to be a businessman. And so, he just kind of gave up, just kind of rolled over on it. And one day he found himself at the state fair. And he was wandering around the state fair, looking at the different booths and the different attractions and the different things that people had for sale. And he accidentally wandered into the backside of the butcher's tent. Now, front end of the butcher's tent, you have the nice cuts of meat for sale. Back end of the butcher's tent, it's a little different story. He saw a bunch of men dressed up in white aprons standing at a steel table. And on one end, the first butcher would pull up an animal carcass and start making cuts on this animal and pass it down to the next person. He makes some more cuts all the way down the line, about 10 guys down the line. The final guy would pull down a piece of butcher paper, stick a cut of meat on it, wrap it up, and push it to the front of the tent to sale. Now, the man marveled at this because he knew that it would take a single butcher a full day to carve up an animal. But this group of guys had figured out a system where they could do it in like 10 to 15 minutes. And so the wheels in his head started turning, and he thought to himself, you know what? I think I can build a business model around this idea. And what if we started on one end with some car parts, and the first guy put some car parts together and passed it down to the next guy, and he put some more car parts on, and so on until the last guy on the line put the final car part on, and you've got a finished car. And so that's what he did. He went out, he started a third company. Now, who am I talking about? Obviously, I'm talking about Henry Ford here, the inventor of the assembly line. Now, Henry Ford started a third company based on this idea. He called it Ford Motor Company, and it's been around for 120 years, and it's one of the most successful auto manufacturers in history. Now, the reason I start with this story is what happened to Henry Ford that day is something very similar that happened to me about 10 years ago. He changed his mindset. When I was 27 years old, I was living in a 2-bedroom apartment. I was making about $40,000 a year. My wife and I were spending about $45,000 a year. We were the average American. And at 27 years old, I probably should have been happy with where I was at, being average, right? But I wasn't. I had set some pretty lofty goals for myself when I was 21. I said, you know what, by the time I'm 30, I want to be a millionaire. I want to be worth $1 million. And by the time I'm 35, I want to make $1 million in a calendar year. And here I was, 27 years old, much closer chronologically to that goal than I was financially. And I didn't know where to turn. I started looking around my industry. At the time, I was working a job selling websites. So I started looking at other salesmen. And, were any of them worth $1 million? Were any of them making $1 million in a calendar year? I didn't see a single person doing what I did professionally, getting the results that I wanted to get. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to start looking at people who I know for sure have done this. I started looking at every wealthy person that I knew. I started reading books that they had written and watching TED Talks that they had given. And I started studying these people, and my study got so intense that I started taking copious notes. I went down to the local big box store, Target, Walmart, and I bought 7 composition notebooks with the lined paper in it. And I just started filling these things furiously with notes. And I filled every one of the books. In fact, I started writing on the back of receipts, on the back of envelopes, just anything and everything that I thought would lend to what these successful people did, because I figured if I could just copy them, I should get the same results. Now, my notes were filled with all sorts of stuff, including what Steve Jobs ate for breakfast, and how Bill Gates tied his shoes, and a lot of very applicable things, and also some useful stuff. So eventually I took my notes and I whittled them down into just the important things, just the things that really led to these people's success. And what I found is that every one of these individuals had certain things in common. But more importantly, I noticed that these people on the screen, they're the same as you and me in a lot of ways. They have 24 hours in a day. Sometimes they feel happy. Sometimes they feel sad. Sometimes they're hungry. Sometimes they're grumpy. Really, the only thing that set them apart is how they utilize their time. And so I eventually took my notes and I compiled it into a paper. And then I took my paper and I compiled it into a book. And in 2015, I published my book on Amazon and it became a bestseller, Mindset's a Millionaire. Now, I bring up the book because I learned some very important things from these people that I want to share with you. The first is the difference between the way the employee mindset individual thinks and the way the wealthy mindset individual thinks. The employee mindset individual thinks in two currencies, and those currencies are money and time. And for the employee mindset individual, money is a more valuable currency than time. Now, this is evident because the employee mindset individual makes money by selling their time. They go down to a job and they offer their employer an hour of their time for $15 or $20 or $25. Now, the inherent problem with this is that you can't get that time back. I want you to try an experiment. I want you to go into your boss and I want you to say, Mr. Boss, I sold you this hour for $20. I would like to buy one of my hours back. Here's $20. May I please buy an hour back? And he might laugh at you at first, thinking that you're just, messing with him. Say, no, I'm serious. In fact, I'm so serious that I'll double it. Here's $40. I just want one of my hours back. Now he's going to look at you like you're kind of crazy. And you're going to say, okay, well, fine. Here's 10 times what you paid me for it. Here's $200. I just want 1 hour back. The problem is he cannot give you an hour back. And the reason is because time is a non-renewable resource. And yet, as employee mindset individuals, we were all trained to sell our time for money. Now, the wealthy mindset individual, they go about it a little bit differently. They think in 5 currencies, and those currencies have a very particular order to them. The most valuable is time. Second is knowledge. Third is relationships. Fourth is credit. And fifth is money. You'll notice that money is last. It's the wealthy mindset individual that says, you know what? It's the wealthy mindset individual that creates the jobs. They're shoveling the money over to the employee mindset saying, you guys take the money, we want the time. There's something to that. Time is a non-renewable resource that you can't get more of. Money, you can always make more of. So I want you guys to keep that in mind as we go through the training today. Also, the employee mindset individual goes about saving in a very particular way. They have one strategy. I call it the accumulation strategy. And basically, that idea is just to build a nest and to stockpile eggs in the nest, right? Whereas the accumulation strategy is this idea of just saving. But the problem is once you hit retirement, you start taking eggs out of that nest and cracking them and using them. And that nest is finite. You may eventually run out of eggs. It would really suck to be 95 years old and have to go get a job because you ran out of retirement money. And I can tell you, if your retirement strategy is hopefully I die before I run out of money, there's a flaw in that. You need to check your retirement strategy. Now, the wealthy go about it differently. They just buy freaking chickens because a chicken will lay an egg every single day, regardless of what you're doing. You could be out of town, a chicken will lay an egg. You could be, you could take a 6-month sabbatical, a chicken will lay an egg, right? You could be dead and a chicken will lay an egg because it really has very little to do with you. But the wealthy, they acquire chickens instead of build a nest for their eggs. Now, of course, I'm not talking about chickens and eggs here. I'm talking about assets. The wealthy buy assets that create cash flow so that cash flow will continue to come in regardless of how long they live. They're going to continue to have that cash flow until the day they die. And then it's a legacy that they can pass on to their children. Now, the last thing that I discovered was that I want to share with you today was that the wealthy, almost to a person, are business owners and real estate investors. And when I first discovered that, I thought, well, sure, that's the case because those two activities make a lot of money. But there's actually many, many layers to why the wealthy choose to be business owners and real estate investors. In fact, one of those I'll just share with you right now. One of those is taxes. We all complain, or we all hear people complain about how the wealthy don't pay their fair share in taxes. Well, they do it. Most of them do it legally, morally, and ethically. They follow the tax code. And what the tax code says is basically it's an incentive program. The government is saying, you know what, if you'll go out and do the things that we, the government, don't want to do, like provide people with jobs and housing, we'll give you a break on your taxes. There are more tax deductions for business ownership and real estate investing than any other activity combined. So these are huge things to remember as we're going into this idea of building wealth using real estate, and specifically short-term rental real estate. So let's get into it. Let's talk about some of the real estate. Now, one of the things that you're going to discover as we start diving into the learning portion of this is that there are systems for everything. The best way to protect your time is build a system around it so that you can, that assembly line like Ford did. You want to be able to execute certain tasks in an efficient way, and also in a way that you can pass on to employees. If you grow to a point where you can't do it all yourself and you need to start bringing on employees, you want a system in place where you can just hand them the keys and they can go drive the car, right? So our deal spotter system starts with lead generation. Then we have certain filters in place. We're going to gauge our seller desire. If we find a property that might work, we're going to ask the seller if they're open to selling. If they are, then it passes through to step 2. If they're not, obviously we throw it away, right? Step 2 is quick analysis. We got to run our numbers. You guys are going to learn how to run numbers quickly within 1 minute to 2 minutes to see whether a certain property is going to be a deal or not, right? Obviously, the ones that are a deal, we move on to step 3. The ones that aren't, we throw away. Step 3 is make an offer. The filter for step 3 is either the seller accepts the offer or they don't, right? The seller decides. The ones that they accept, obviously move on to step 4. The ones that they don't, we throw away. Long analysis, this is where we actually go into the property and we do our due diligence. We look at the walls, we look at the foundation, we look at the windows, we look at, what needs to be done to the property. What are the things that are wrong with the property? And then at that point, that filter is you decide. I decide whether I want the property or not at that point, or if I need to go back and ask for a discount because maybe the property's in worse condition than I thought it was when I made my original offer. So once it passes through there, either we throw it out or we keep it. If it's good enough, we keep it. We go to step 5, we follow through on the deal and we fund it. Now let's talk about what that looks like. Now I'm going to share with you an actual real example. This is not a guarantee that you guys are going to find this deal or make this money. This is just an example of one deal that we're doing right now that we're having some success with. So this is a short-term rental in Salt Lake City, Utah on Commonwealth Avenue that we call Commonwealth, right? This is a beautiful property that we went in and did some remodeling to prepare it for a short-term rental scenario where we're going to be able to cash flow some serious money here. And here are the numbers on this deal. We purchased this thing for $550. Excuse me. We purchased this thing for $550,000. We put about $90,000 into it. And we brought in about $40,000 worth of staging. That's the beds and the couches and the TVs and all of the, towels and the toilet paper and all the things that are needed in order to run a successful short-term rental. Our revenue is going to be right around $100,000 a year. Now, these are obviously rounded numbers, but our revenue is projected to be right around our revenue is projected to be right around $100,000 a year. And after all of our expenses and management fees, we're expecting to make right in the ballpark of $42,000, $45,000 a year on this property. Now, here's the thing. If you go and try to do this by yourself, here's what you're looking at. You're going to have to go get a mortgage, right? And with that mortgage, you're going to have to provide 20% down. At $680,000, which is what it took to buy this property and remodel it and get it to a point where it was ready for a short-term rental, 20% of that's about $110,000. Our staging costs on this property were 30 grand, right? So if we put that all together, our total cash needed is $140,000. Now, most people could only do one of these, right? If you're working an average job and you're saving up money and you need to save up 140 grand, you're saving for a really long time in order to save up that money. And then you're utilizing your credit and leveraging yourself to be able to purchase this property. So most people could only ever do one, maybe in a decade, maybe in a lifetime, right? And you know what? $42,000 in cash flow for yourself per year is great, but that's by no means wealthy. And after the inflation that we've gone through since the COVID boom in the real estate market and cost of living's gone up, $42,000 isn't really a whole lot to live on these days. So This is where I go back to what I said at the beginning. Real estate is something that if you want to be wealthy with it, you have to understand how to scale it. So what is the secret there? There is actually a major secret that we take advantage of in order to scale these properties. And that secret is using other people's money and really other people's resources, right? We talked about the 5 currencies of the wealthy: time, knowledge, relationships, credit, and money. We're going to use an example of how we use someone else's credit and someone else's money to make this deal happen. So let's talk about doing it with OPM, other people's money. Our all-in cost on this property was $680,000. We need a mortgage. So let's go get a credit partner. You're not going to be able to do more than, a couple of mortgages, maybe a handful of mortgages at most, on your own credit. That's going to limit your scale. Let's make decisions and strategic moves here to make sure that you're not limiting yourself to how many you can do. So we go find someone with really good credit that wants to be a part owner in a short-term rental, and we offer them 10% ownership in the property. They are our credit partner, they qualify for the mortgage, and they get it, right? We still need that $140,000 down. So let's go find some guys with cash. It doesn't even have to be one guy with 140. It can be a handful of guys or gals that we lump that cash together as a partnership, and it comes out to 140 grand. Now, if you do some quick math and you take 140,000 and divide that by 680,000, which is our all-in, that's 20%. So because they're bringing 20% of the total cost of this project to the deal, we're going to give that equity partner or equity partners as a group 20% of the equity of this deal. It's math, it's fair, it's easy, it's straightforward, right? But that means that you, as the primary partner and the investor in this deal, the one with the knowledge, remember the 5 currencies: time, knowledge, relationships, credit, money. Knowledge is the number 2 currency. It's much more valuable than credit or money. That's why you, as the primary partner, is going to be retaining 70% of this deal, of this hypothetical deal that we're talking about, right? But this really translates to real life as we do these things. A lot of these people that become your mortgage equity partner or your credit partners and your cash equity partners, they don't necessarily know how to do it, but they want to be involved in real estate and they want to go out and invest. If you just educate yourself to a point where you can put these deals together, people are going to be anxiously looking for opportunities to come out and do this with you. And because you're bringing the most valuable currency to the table out of the partners here, you're also going to get the highest percentage return, right? So with using other people's credit and other people's money, there is no limit to the number of short-term rentals that you can do. Now, I like to say that real estate is an ideal investment. And you know what? For your equity partners and for yourself, it's not just about how much it cash flows, right? That's one way to look at your return on investment, is what your cash flow is. But real estate really is the ideal investment. And ideal is an acronym for income, deductions, equity, appreciation, and leverage. So let's talk about that. Income is the cash flow that we take on a monthly basis, right? So that's going to be the cash flow that comes in. That's one form of how this investment will return money into your pocket. Deductions are the tax deductions that we can take. Now, I have coached a lot of people through real estate. I've owned dozens of properties across the United States. And I recognize that a rental property is one of the best tax shelters in existence. If not, I'll tell you, it's the best tax shelter that I've found, right? So there are a lot of deductions that come with owning real estate that you and your partners get to take advantage of to the extent of the equity that you own in the property. Now, the third is equity. Now, this version of equity that we're talking about is the amount that you've paid down the mortgage, right, over time. So as you're collecting that money from your short-term rental guests, you're going to be paying a mortgage payment on a monthly basis. Every month, that mortgage, the balance on that mortgage decreases by the amount of principal from your payment, right? So every month you're building a little bit of equity in that property. And when you go to sell it 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, maybe even 15 years down the road, you are going to be capitalizing on that money, and it will come back to you in the form of cash when you sell the property. So that equity is another way that you can calculate your ROI on that property. Also, beyond that, we have about 200 years of data. I love real estate investing as an investment category because we have more data on it than we do in any other investment category. We have almost 200 years of data. And if you average out all 200 years, including, the 1930s, the Great Depression, 2008, the Great Recession, and even the good times like 2021 when values exploded, right? It averages out to 4 to 5% annually. So you can count on an average, maybe one year it'll go down, but the next year it'll go up kind of thing. You can count on an average of 4 to 5% appreciation. And at the end of, however long you hold this property, when you sell it, that's another way that you're going to be making money on this investment. And of course, the last one is leverage. As you build that equity and appreciation, you don't necessarily need to sell the property to be able to take advantage of it. You can refinance the property or get a HELOC on the property and go and purchase more real estate to double your efforts here and make even more money. So it really is a fantastic way to build wealth. And short-term rentals right now are the hot thing in this market. You don't want to miss out on this stuff. It's absolutely incredible. Remember that knowledge is the tool that enables you to change your mindset, and mindset is the key to changing your life. Guys, thanks so much for having me on.